Hello there. What is going on, everybody? Today, I'm going to be doing another Clone Wars Star Wars Armada ship breakdown. This time, we're looking at the Hardcell. You might remember this one from the Separatist forces on the ground during the Battle of Geonosis. This is one of those ships that was trying to take off. It is maybe not one of the most recognizable ships, but it definitely leaves an impression with me or anybody who plays this game. It's a fantastic ship. It's the only small ship available to the Separatists currently in Star Wars Armada, and you're going to be getting 2 of these in the Separatist starter, so you'll definitely have some options. If you guys are new here to the channel, I do invite you to subscribe, check out some more videos. We've got a lot of Star Wars Armada videos. We're also giving away a lightsaber right now, so all you have to do to enter to win that lightsaber giveaway is be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. If you're already subscribed, you're already halfway there. It's really as simple as that. Also, you should check out some of the links we have down in the video description. I have a great Discord. I'd love to have you in there. If you have more questions, you want to learn more about Armada, the Discord is a great way to get you going. It's a great way to talk about the games, build fleets with other people, share your paint jobs, look at other people's contributions, and just become part of the community. So it's also very family-friendly Discord. Also, other links for social media are down there. If you're interested in Patreon and helping support the channel, that's a great way to do that. Twitter, Facebook, all that other stuff is all down there. So you can check all of that stuff out at your leisure. But for right now, let's go ahead and talk about the Hardcell. So the Hardcell is actually a fantastic ship. For a small ship, it does have 5 hull, and it's a single 1-command ship. It has a brace, which a lot of small ships don't have, especially 1-command small ships, and it has the evade and a redirect. And so just a really, really good combination of defense tokens. It does have 3 shields in the front, 1 shield in the sides, and 2 in the rear. So it kind of really mirrors a little bit of the Nebulon B for the Rebellion in a lot of its defensive posture. But it's just got a lot more going for it, I think, overall, in that its 2 versions of its ship are very, very different. And we're going to talk about their differences and a little bit more contrast here momentarily. But for a small ship, it is fairly maneuverable at speeds 1 and 2. It begins to lose some of that maneuverability when it goes up to speed 3, not having a click on the end. But still, having 2 clicks available at any speed is not bad at all. And it's going to need that maneuverability because it is pretty much a front arc shooter. So it's going to want to be pointed at the battle. It's going to want to be pointed at enemy ships. And some versions and some builds of this ship will want that a little bit more than others. It is also a 3 engineering ship, which is pretty good, especially for a small ship. If in case it does have to do some engineering, and there's definitely reasons why it might. We'll talk a little bit more about the specifics for each one in a moment, but in either version, you're not going to get any firepower out of the rear, and that's going to be important, especially when we look at these firing arcs. Now, it's mostly kind of a straight X, but it is squeezed. Basically the front and rear are a little bit wider, right? So those lines are kind of squeezed in the middle a little bit. Your side arcs are a little bit more narrow. Your front arc is a little bit wider, which is good because you do want to take advantage of that front arc. But as a result of that, your rear arc is also a little bit wider on this one too, which means it is not that hard for fast-moving ships to get behind you and then completely out of your firing arc. So if this is a ship that if you're building this in a way that it wants to shoot, and usually in Armada you do kind of want to take every shot you can most of the time, that rear arc not having a single die printed in it is going to be very, very difficult. So that is going to influence some of our build choices too, because we're going to talk about some builds and some of the titles as well for this ship. But first off, let's break down each version in a little bit more detail. So I would like to start out with the Battle Refit. This is a 52-point ship. Now, a little bit more expensive than a lot of 1-command ships, but still not too bad. It's cheap enough that you can fit quite a few of them in a build. So cheap, in fact, that a lot of people have picked up additional starters for the Separatists because some people would like to run more than 2 of these Hardcells because they are fairly cost ineffective and you do throw a lot of dice at long range. So the Battle Refit, the first thing that kind of makes this one stand out is that it's got 3 red dice in the front arc. So this is throwing a respectable long-range shot to kind of rival a lot of medium and large ships at long range. And so a lot of these lined up side by side can really put out a nasty firing line if they're all pointed at the same target. And it's not that hard to do with a ship that's moderately maneuverable, has a small base, and has a big, moderately wide front arc. It's not that hard at all. You add a little bit more to this because you have your side arcs are also a red dice. So if somebody is trying to get around you, there's a good chance you might be able to double arc somebody and kind of make there be a whole second shot, which is, sure, why not? Now, if it's obstructed with only 1 die in there, you're not going to get much. But the front arc is really where you want to make your money on this ship. You only have 1 command, only 1 squadron, so not doing a whole lot of squadron pushing, but you do have 3 engineering. Now, you also have a pretty decent anti-squadron firepower of a black and a blue. So in addition to having the best firepower versus ships, you also have really good firepower against squadrons if you decide to flak a little bit, as we call it. For upgrades, we have an officer like we typically do. We have offensive retrofit, we have defensive retrofit, and we have turbo laser. So this is kind of like wanting to be a large ship, right? Like this is the small ship that thinks it's a medium ship or thinks it's even a large ship. If you ever wanted to make a small ship your flagship, this is the version that you would use for the Separatists. Offensive retrofit has a lot of different things that you can do, and a lot of times that's used for squadrons, but sometimes that can be used for a variety of other and different types of either support or offensive capability. A lot of times it's used for ships that have blue dice to extend those out to long range, but in this case there is no blue dice in its anti-ship armament, so you won't use something like disposable capacitors. It does have a defensive retrofit, which is going to be great for just helping this ship stay alive, and with 5 hull and brace and evade and redirect and 3 shields in the front, it actually has a surprising amount of survivability, especially if you can keep your front pointed towards the enemies. But even if they get to your side, you still have a redirect to kind of put 2 damage straight to the back or 3 damage to the front. So this is you just tend to think that small ships are going to be one-shotted, and this is a ship that is not likely to be one-shotted because of its kind of perfect combination of hull and defensive tokens and shields. It's just kind of got a lot of things going for it there. And Turbo Laser is definitely a great upgrade slot for a ship with a lot of red dice. Turbo Laser upgrades tend to favor ships with red dice and usually tend to go on ships that have a lot of red dice and just make it all work out. So this is kind of your shooter and your survivable, even a little bit tanky shooter. But what makes this ship so cool is that when we look over at the Hardcell Class Transport, our cheaper and more support variant of this ship, we notice that this is almost a whole different ship. A lot of the ships in Star Wars Armada, especially those belonging to the Empire and Rebellion, kind of had like early concept phase of a design flaw, maybe, that both versions were very, very similar. Not all of them, but a lot of ships did not have that many differences between like a Mark I and a Mark II or something like that, the 2 different versions. But this ship is one of the most drastically different ships from basically the more expensive version to the cheaper version that we've ever seen. And it really gives you a tremendous value, and it's a real boon to the Separatist fleet that, out of having so few ships, each Clone Wars faction right now only has 4 ships. But when you look at this card, you see so much more, and it feels like it's a whole different ship. So the Transport is the support variant, and also the, to a lesser extent, the Squadron variant, in that it does have a second Squadron value, so this one can push squads at a moderate, kind of at a respectable rate. It doesn't have quite the same anti-squadron armament. It loses a lot of dice, right? Or it downgrades or loses dice. So we've only got 1 blue for our anti-squadron armament, and we kind of downgrade our ship firepower to only 2 red and a single blue in the front, and both of our side arcs are downgraded from red to blue here. So, again, we have to be at closer range to make sure that we're getting all of our dice on our target, but this is usually not a ship that you're as worried about your firepower with, especially when it comes to all of those upgrades. Now, for a 47-point ship, you're going to be saving some points. It's about 5 points cheaper than the Battle Refit. You'll notice we have very few upgrades in common with the Battle Refit. But if we're going from left to right, the first thing we're going to notice is that while we have an officer, we also have another officer. We have a second officer slot on this, which is extremely rare. Only massively huge ships tend to have more than one officer slot. Think ships like the Starhawk, or ships like the Super Star Destroyer. And it's just very rare for a ship to have a second officer slot. The Phoenix Home expansion has, the Phoenix Home card that kind of can do that as well, but that's a very rare thing. So for the Hardcell class to be such a cheap ship that just naturally has such a very cool ability is something worth taking note of, and we'll factor that in when we look at some build ideas for this class of ship. So in addition to 2 officer slots, we also have the support team. Again, I said this was the support variant. The support team is a perfect upgrade for a support variant type ship. And in addition to that, we also have fleet support. The fleet support is a great option. This is the way that a lot of Separatists, are going to get fleet support into their fleets. It's just a really great utility option to have. Not that many fleet supports exist within each faction, so this is a really cool way. It kind of fits the bill of almost like the flotilla for this faction, whereas the Rebels and Empire have their GR-75s and their Gazantes. This is kind of that version for the Separatists, except this is not exactly a flotilla, and it's much harder to kill. At least with somebody who can manufacture a single accuracy and knock out that scatter. But yeah, it's just got all the support upgrades you could want at the cost of having some firepower. But it also gains a squadron point, so it can do a little bit better with pushing squadrons. Now, the Hardcell is going to have a couple of titles, so we'll talk about these two. We've got the Foreman's Labor at a 5-point title. This one says, before you suffer damage from an attack, if the defending hull zone has at least 1 shield remaining, you may exhaust this card to reduce the total damage by 1. So this one's just going to help your survivability. This is going to be a really nice one for, if, like I said before, if you're running the tankier version, maybe the battle refit with a defensive retrofit, this is another option to give yourself even more survivability. If players want to run like lots and lots of small ships and go for high activation count, this is something you might want to put on, and make your flagship for the Foreman's Labor. It's a possibility if you're thinking of doing that, or if you just want to make sure you don't lose this ship. It's another way to increase survivability and add a couple of extra damage reduction during your game. Now, Beast of Burden at 6 points is also an exhaustible. It says, when you activate, you may exhaust this card and spend 1 or more of your defense tokens to choose up to that many defense tokens on friendly ships at distance 1 to 3 and ready those defense tokens. So at first, when this first came out, it was very similar to General Grievous's ability, and so it's like, oh, this is a really nice ability. But as more commanders have come out for the Separatists, I think the value of Beast of Burden has gone up a little bit, because now there's a lot more commanders you might want to take other than General Grievous, and so it allows you to kind of still get some of that token refresh into your army without having to take Grievous. It also opens up the possibility to run Grievous as a squadron and still kind of get his part of his commander ability, just a fraction of it. But it's a nice thing that you can do every turn, and it does cost 6 points. But you'd be able to get, and it's especially nice when you have like a ship with a single brace out there. Beast of Burden is great for a support version of the ship, so I really like this one for the transport version of the Hardcell. And because it helps your flagship stay alive, it gets that brace back and ready again. It also gets your salvos back and ready again. There's a lot of, now this is a ship that doesn't salvo, but there's a lot of stuff in the Separatist fleet that definitely wants to salvo and can be built such that it would love to be able to salvo multiple times each round. And Beast of Burden is a way that you can kind of make that possible. So that's very cool. So I want to talk about a couple of build ideas for this. I'll do 2 builds for each version of the ship. I'll start off with kind of a simpler build here for the battle refit. This is our big shooter one, and so if you're doing quite a lot of these, and maybe you don't want to spend as much points, because I love to put spinal armament on the Hardcell battle refit. A whole lot of those with spinal armament is really cool, but I also like quad battery turrets. It's almost half the points of spinal armament. And if you're going slow, which a lot of times battle lines will kind of move slow, you don't want people to, you don't want to go too fast and make it easy for people to kind of get past you and end up in your rear arc. So I'd like to, once I kind of get turned the way I want to get turned, I'll move kind of slow. And maybe if I have a couple of these, quad battery turrets is going to mean I get an extra blue die. And this can potentially have a higher yield because if I'm able to double arc somebody, I'll get 2 extra shots. Each of them gain an extra blue die. They have to be going faster than me, but I don't mind that on a ship that's kind of pointed where it wants to go and moves nice and slow. I don't mind if you go, if you don't go faster than me. Oh, I don't get my extra blue die? No problem. We're at long range. That means I'm going to have like 3 rounds of shooting on you before you get past me. So I, it's like a win-win. If you go faster to try to get around me, I get extra dice on you. If you go slow, I get the same dice, but I get to shoot you for longer, usually from relative safety as well. And I put reserve hangar deck on here just as an option because in case you wanted to maybe keep one of your tri-fighters alive a little bit longer. It's an 11-point squadron. You can keep it alive for only 3. Like the reserve hangar deck is a relatively newer upgrade, but it's a great way to kind of have this ship have a little extra function, a little extra utility beyond just shooting. And this is kind of a cheaper way to maximize points and to still have a heavy, kind of a heavy offensive ship. For the transport, I have an interesting idea here on how you can support. Like a lot of times, I'll start from here. Bomber Command Center. It's just one of those things a lot of times you want to run. If you're running bombers, you generally want a Bomber Command Center because you need those rerolls, and that's kind of what everybody does. Engine Techs is kind of a nice option for support team if you want to stay mobile. You either want to keep this ship alive, you want to keep it in range of something like Bomber Command, or you want to use it to go pick up objectives. Whatever you want to do with Engine Techs, it is nice to have kind of a Speed Force ship technically available to the Separatists, and this kind of gives you that kind of Speed 4 capability. But you would need to have a nav each turn, which maybe you want to do a little bit of squadron stuff. So I present to you a really cool option of running the T-Series Tactical Droid and Takei's together, which normally you can't do this on any other ship in the Separatists since they don't really, as most ships in the game, don't have multiple officer slots. But this one does. And this is just so cool because what it allows you to do is Takei's is letting you just say, hey, I'm going to take a free token anytime I want. It just means I have to set that command down, as my next, kind of as my next command. But then the T-Series lets me just say, oh, if I spend a token, I get to, I can exhaust this and get whatever command I want. So if you want to be able to get 2 commands like virtually every other turn, because the T-Series does have to, kind of get unexhausted, it allows you to basically support squadrons and do your nav command with engine techs in the same turn. Or if you need to do some engineering, all right, whatever command you might want to do, if you've got the T-Series ready, you just take Takei's and say, oh, you know what, I need an engineering this turn. I'll take an engineering token, tap the T-Series droid, turn it into a full engineering command, and we are good to go. So it's kind of a really cool little thing, and there's a lot of other combinations that you can do to make those two work together and do different things. But engine techs is an option if you're pushing squadrons with Bomber Command Center. You're probably going to want every squadron token, every squadron command that you can manage. So I think that's a fun way to run this one. Now I'll do some with the titles. We have the Foreman's Labor here. This is kind of like my powerhouse version of the Hardcell. We might not always run all of this, but it's a combination of being survivable and also being deadly, and it's a very fun one. So we already talked about the title for Foreman's Labor. I already talked about how I like spinal armament on this thing. I like this one a lot, especially to pair it with the B-2 rocket troopers. This is really nice. The Hardcells are used a lot in the 1776 builds. That's when you add the Commander TF 1726. Did I say 1776? But TF 1726 basically can give you extra dice against an opponent that has raid tokens on them, and the B-2 rocket trooper can activate when you're going to attack somebody and put a raid token on them, which is really, really nice. You combine that with spinal armament, and then all of a sudden you go from 3 dice to 4 dice here to maybe 5 or even 6 potentially if you've got 1726 when you've got other raid tokens on there. And then let's just say you concentrated fire also, so all of a sudden this little ship is throwing a ridiculous fistfuls of dice at your opponent, which can be really, really fun. But if that's the case, if you are that deadly, people are going to try and kill you. So we've got Foreman's Labor over here to say, hey, I've still got a shield left. Boom, we'll reduce the damage by 1. If they do get through your shields, you've got reinforced blast doors. And of course, we got the expert shield tech on there to even once our shields are gone to allow our redirect token a little extra utility. So that is always a fun thing. A lot of damage reduction here and damage removal and damage infliction. So really fun, kind of like the perfect storm. Now, you don't necessarily have to build all of those. You could run this with just the offensive stuff or just the defensive stuff, but you have options to run all of them together. We also have Beast of Burden title here for the transport, and this is like a pure support build. This is the build that is just all about helping out the fleet and helping everybody else other than yourself. So we've got Beast of Burden. Of course, we're going to be spending our defense tokens to give stuff out to other people. We've got parts resupply on here as our, and again, there's lots of different ones. We already talked about Bomber Command. You could go with CommsNet too, but parts resupply, you can hit a much larger fleet all at once if you need to hand out engineering tokens. And again, well, like we looked at the other version, if you have, the tactical droids on other ships that might need, you turn an engineering token into an engineering dial, something like parts resupply can potentially do that. We've got projection experts. Again, if we're looking at, hey, if we're going to send our defense tokens to the flagship, let's also send some of our shields to the flagship as well. We've got Hondo. If we're handing out tokens, let's use Hondo and hand out 2 more tokens, which is also an option. He can also give yourself an engineering token to reset your parts resupply if you need to do that as well. This is a ship that probably wants to run engineering a couple of times because of projection experts. Send those shields over. It's always a fun one. And as a matter of fact, with an engineering value of 3, you can do an engineering command, send 1 shield over, and then spend the other 2 points to regenerate that same shield. So you don't even have to send 2 at a time. You can send 1 at a time with virtually no penalty, which is a cool idea. And then you've got TI-99, and he's there to kind of support your squadrons. So I just kind of wanted this one to be a kind of an all-around support, whether it's token, command tokens, defense tokens, shields, and squadron support. We're doing a lot of that. If your squadrons are going to die, then might as well let them have counter 3, or if you really need it, it's a great option to have, and he's only 4 points. It's not bad. And so that's kind of a sample Beast of Burden build. And I think that's about all she wrote for the Hardcell. I just think it's a great ship. It's a ship you often want to run multiples in, or maybe just one for support. But it's a tough little ship. They're so much harder to kill than they look. I mean, anybody who's played against them knows what I'm talking about. You very, very seldom can take a Hardcell down as quickly as you thought you could, until you've played against them multiple times and realize, okay, I'm gonna, I stopped the brace. Well, no problem. You're a bigger ship. They're gonna spend the evade, and they're gonna discard the evade, cancel 2 of your dice, and then they're gonna redirect, and then they still have 3 shields, and so you still needed 8 damage to try to get through. You're like, oh, it's not happening, even when you stop the brace, right? So they're much tougher to kill than, say, a CR90 or something to that effect. But hopefully you guys like this video. I've been doing lots of ship breakdowns for Star Wars Armada, the Clone Wars. I will be going into the Galactic Civil War, and I'll probably be updating my what to buy first videos. So lots more Armada content coming. So it's an exciting time to be playing Armada. It's going to be a great year for Armada. I can't wait for you guys to tell me about some of your favorite builds for the Hardcell. I will talk to you guys soon. I want to thank you all so much. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys help make this channel possible, so thank you for your continued support. Always remember, don't twirl a laser gun too fast, because if it drops, that could discharge, and you might have holes in the roof.